Hey guys, it's me, and today I am back with a new video for you guys. Now, I'm not entirely sure how this video is actually going to wind up turning out in the very end because I'm filming this on Sunday. But as of right now, my plan is that we are just going to be recreating a look verbatim. We are going to be doing my makeup how I used to way back in the day when I first started really getting into makeup. When I first started getting into makeup, I didn't have a whole lot of products and everything. A lot of the products that I had were fairly cheap. NYX and e.l.f. are like my go-to brands. Oh, and Wet n Wild. Those are like my go-to brands back in the early days. Nowadays, I don't use a whole lot of drugstore makeup anymore. I mostly use like more like mid-range to higher end brands nowadays. The look that we're gonna be recreating today, it's not gonna be 100% a recreation, but more so we're going for the same kind of vibe, because a lot of the products that I was using back in this day I no longer have. The eye look that we're going to be creating today, that was something that was pretty standard, and so this was a go-to look for me. It was kind of like, I guess you could say, like a red smoky eye, if that, and not really a smoky eye. What it would be like a cranberry, like plummy, warm toned like type of like smoky color on the lid, and then do a bright red shadow in the crease and along the lower lash line. And then in the early days with me doing this particular look, there would be times when I would put black in the waterline, or I would do a nude liner in the waterlines. Today we're going to be going for like the black waterline look, but we're going to have to finagle some things around because I no longer have a black pencil liner. And if you hear things happening in the background, by the way, my roommate just got back from grocery shopping and he's about to start meal prepping, so yeah. So we're just gonna ignore that. I have two separate videos that I am using for reference for this makeup. So both of these videos are unlisted. You cannot watch these videos on my previous Beauty Fashion Lifestyle channel anymore. One of them was the Chit Chat Get Ready With Me, in which I just did like a voiceover and just talked about some random shit, I'm guessing, while I put myself together. And then the other one was a Power of Makeup video that I did back when the Power of Makeup was a trend. We're mostly going to be basing things off of that particular video. That video was posted February 10th of 2016, and then the Chit Chat Get Ready With Me was November 19th of 2016. I think we're mostly going to be focusing on like the one from February though, the Power of Makeup one, just simply because that look is more true to what I was doing back in the era of time that I'm wanting to go for with creating this look and everything, because I do plan on doing another one from like that era of like late 2016 into like, I'd say in like early 2018, which was like me when I really got into neutrals and was generally only doing neutral looks, but grungy neutral looks. And so I want to do a separate video on that. And my makeup was also changing during that period of time. This was like when I first started getting into makeup, what we're doing here today. I know in this particular video, the Power of Makeup video that I have here, I listed all the products that I was using in the actual video. And the Chit Chat Get Ready With Me, I have all the products listed in the description box. Okay, so my roommate is actually heading out for a little bit, so we don't have to worry about hearing them in the background. Cool beans. Just like reading the products in the description box though on the Chit Chat Get Ready With Me, it was very much like a similar vibe going on here and everything as it was back in like the earlier part of that year. It's just that things were starting to become a little bit more refined, and I was finding myself going for that more grungy aesthetic. This part in the earlier time of the year was more so when I was still going for that more goth aesthetic. Anyways, we're gonna watch this like little video here in the background, and then we are going to put makeup on as well. So I'm just gonna be having this go in here just so I can see what products it was that I was using and the order of things and the kinds of products that I'm using and whatnot. I already have a lot of products set off here to the side of what I'm pretty sure that I was using back in the day, or at least that can give me a similar effect. And then we're gonna go from there. Let's go ahead and dive on into this. We got an interesting time ahead of us and everything with recreating this old look. Before we dive on into it, if you guys are new here to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, and also while you're down there, definitely give this video a thumbs up because that'll help me out a lot. All my links are down in the description box below, which are the links to my Twitter, Instagram, and my music channel. Definitely check me out on all those places if you're interested, and let's hop on into this. Also, no, I did not trim my facial hair shorter for this video. No, I actually wanted to try seeing how I would look without facial hair. Last week, I wanted to see how I looked since I hadn't been like clean shaven in like 3 years. And honestly, I wasn't that mad about it. But at the same time, I think I prefer having like some sort of like scruff happening or an actual full-blown beard. I'll pop up a quick image of how I looked like without any facial hair at all so you guys can see it. This Power of Makeup video is like a little over 7.5 minutes long, and it took me 3.5 minutes to get to the makeup. Girl, go ahead and start. So I'm priming my eyes using the e.l.f. Essential Eyelid Primer. And I'm blending it out with a finger. I don't have that primer. I don't even think they make that primer anymore. I'm pretty sure they discontinued it. So I'm going to go into what that primer was a really good dupe for, as also the primer that I have and use now and is my go-to and has been my go-to for a long period of time. Urban Decay Primer Potion. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pop some of this onto both lids. I would also run this on the bottom lids too. So we're gonna do that too. I didn't wear concealer back in these days. And then I blended it out with the finger, which I don't do this anymore. I use a brush to blend out my primers now. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using your fingers to blend out a primer. I just prefer using a brush. I don't know if the camera's going to be picking this up or not, but I can definitely hear children screaming. Just a little ways down from our apartment building is the public pool in our complex. And our complex is also rather small. The next step, and this is something that I used to do all the time back in these days, and that was that I would set my primer with a translucent powder. So the powder that I used back then was the e.l.f. Translucent Mattifying Powder. That powder was a pressed powder, and I wish that I would have ordered a pressed powder, but I decided to get a loose powder just simply because I think using loose powders are a lot easier, and then too it's a lot easier to find loose translucent powder. So I ordered this one. This is from One Size. I got this recently because my birthday happened, so I want to make sure to get my birthday gift from Sephora in time, and in order to get it you had to spend $25, and I was just like, well, shit. And so I was just like, all right, let me throw something extra into my cart so that way it would be over $25. And so I threw this in, and then too I knew that I wanted to do this video. So we're going to take this powder. I'm gonna go ahead and open this guy on up, take off the safety seal, put the cap back on, shake it, open it back up, and then we have some powder in here, as you guys can see, but we're not going to dip into the powder in there. No, we're going to dip into the little bit of powder that's in the cap here. I'm going to use a similar brush that I have now, and this is from BH Cosmetics. This was from their Crystal Zodiac collection, and this is the number 5 brush. I'm going to pick up that setting powder on this brush and just go around the eyes with it. I think I had saw somebody doing it online once before. I think it might have been Samantha Ravidal, I think she would set her primer with powders back in these days, I think, and she said that it really helped out with blending out her eyeshadow. So I would just use a translucent powder because I just prefer to use a translucent powder, but then too I think that's the kind of powder she was using too. So all right, got that set. Alright, so now what is next? Alright, it looks like I'm going in with a NYX Primal color in a hot red. And it looks like I'm applying it using a shader brush all over the lid and blending it up into the crease. I no longer have NYX Primal Color and Hot Red because for one, they discontinued those, and two, I'm gonna be showing you guys the video that I'm watching here in the background. It has hardly any saturation of color, as you guys can see, which is going to make this a little bit difficult to like fully recreate that whole vibe of this look, because the red shadow that I have in my collection now is way more saturated, and that is Love Plus by Sugarpill. Now, this version of Love Plus is not the current version of Love Plus. They recently reformulated it, I think within like the past year or so, and I got this before they reformulated it. So we're gonna take this guy here on, I still have that same brush that I used to apply it with, and it's this double-sided Shany brush here. Shany is just like a random cheapo brand that I found off of Amazon years and years ago, and I used the shader brush on this end, which I think is the E11, I think. And so I'm just gonna take Love Plus here, and we're just gonna pop it onto the lid. Let me see, does this palette have a mirror in it? I think it does. It does, okay, cool. And so we're just gonna pop this all over the lid. And then blend it into the crease afterwards. Well, actually, another reason why it was probably lacking color saturation is because of the fact that I went in with that setting powder and pop that onto the lid. That probably disrupted a lot of the color saturation, because I'm noticing right now that this isn't as saturated as I know Love Plus to be. But then too, I've also had this guy for a long time too, so it could just be old. Used to not take shadows very high back in these days. Like, I would just take it up right about in here, and that's it. God, this is looking so patchy. You know what, and I'm pretty sure it's because of that setting powder that I have underneath here. Because I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it's not looking that red in the crease. I want it to be a little bit more uniform, because even though that hot red shade had barely any color in it, it was still more uniform in terms of all over pigmentation. So this is what we got going on right now, and this is as high as I would take my shadows. So yeah, like, I would blow this out a lot more now in present day, but going for what I used to go for back in these days. So now I'm gonna recreate this over here. This is what we got going on right now. It's very blocky and everything, so yeah, definitely having a garage door moment happening at the moment. All right, so the next step, I take a big brush and go around it using a nude eyeshadow. And back then I was using Kinky by Urban Decay. That was I believe an exclusive shade in the Smoked palette. They've discontinued that palette. And not only that, but I no longer have that palette. I gave it away to my friend Astrid, which they still use it, from what they told me recently when they were here on my birthday. The brush that I used to blend it out with was this brush right here, this Real Techniques. I believe this was their deluxe crease brush. Yes. So I actually use this brush now to like blend out primer and concealer. So yeah. But back in these days, I didn't have that many brushes, so I used what I had access to. So what we're gonna do, since I don't have access to Kinky, what we're gonna do to blend out these edges is we're gonna go in with the shade Bare here from the Huda Beauty New Nude palette. Now, I don't know how intensive my blending was for this. I think I might have just went around the edges and that was it. I wonder why I'm just doing, oh yeah, that's right, I would just do garage doors back in these days. That's right, I wouldn't take shadow onto my bottom lid. I completely forgot about that. Oh shit. So what am I gonna do about this shit here? I guess we can try covering it up with foundation later. It's always interesting to go back and look at your makeup choices from back in the day. Did definitely blur out the edges a lot more doing this. The problem is though, is that it doesn't create a good blend and everything. Like, you can easily just blend out your shadows with just like a clean blending brush, but back in these days I didn't understand that, and I also didn't have the blending brushes really to make that feasible. All right, so after we blend, I went in with the NYX Baked eyeshadow in Mademoiselle, and I would apply it wet. This is where things get really complicated for me because, for one, I don't have that baked eyeshadow anymore. Two, they discontinued their baked eyeshadow formula a long time ago. The reason why I applied it wet was because with that baked eyeshadow, if you used it dry, it had very, very weak pigmentation and it would be more matte. If you applied it wet, it would have almost like a metallic satiny kind of finish, and I would apply that onto the lid. So we're going to dip into this guy here, this Strawberry Dream from Lunar Beauty. I don't know which shade is going to be more closer to it, either Ruby Skies or Nightfall. Into the Nightfall. I think Nightfall is actually a lot closer. Let me swatch them next to each other real quick. Oh yeah, Nightfall is going to be a lot closer to that, because this is Nightfall and this is Ruby Skies. Ruby Skies is way more metallic. This is more, it's still metallic, but it's more of a shimmer, if that makes any sense. I'm going to pick up a random shader brush. The one that I was using there, I no longer have. So I'm just going to pick up one that, do I even have a shader brush that's similar to that one? I kind of do. So it's a bit longer, but it's a similar shader brush, and this is another Crystal Zodiac brush from BH Cosmetics, and this is the number 9. And I'm just gonna pick up that Nightfall shade, and we're just gonna pop this onto the mobile lid. Oh yeah, this is the right kind of shade. Okay, good. Yeah, because applying this is just like waking up all these different memories of me doing this kind of look. And I would just keep this on the mobile lid. Wouldn't take it higher. Just kept it onto the mobile lid, and that's it. I don't know if this would be considered like a smoky eye, or if this would be considered just like a red eye. I don't know. Because it's like, I think it's like trying to be a smoky eye, but without fully committing to being a smoky eye. That's what we got going for us right now. So now I'm just going to take that crease brush and we're just going to blend these edges. There we go. There we have it. Alrighty, so what do we do next? Alright, so now I'm filling in my brows with a black, I think, or like a black brown. And I'm using an angled brush for this. Okay, I mean, this was back in the days when I had black in my hair, as you guys can see from the video. So, and I don't think, the only black that I have up here is Sugar Pills Bulletproof, but that is way too harsh of a black. But at the same time, it's kind of true to like the vibe that I would go for. So I guess we're just gonna dive on into Bulletproof here from Sugar Pill. And I still have that same angled brush. This is from Shani again, and it is the B13. And I use that big ass spoolie that I had. Okay, so we're gonna go in with this black. Just gonna fill in our brows using a black eyeshadow. And I would just full on block brow it back in these days. Now I am going to try to go a little bit softer with this, not because of like personal preferences or anything like that, but more so because I know that I wasn't using like a straight up black. Because this is more so the kind of tone that I went for. Or something like this. Oh wow, I am very blown out right now. I still have that big ass spoolie. This is technically a hair mascara wand, but I would use this to comb through my brows because this was the only kind of spoolie like brush I had back in these days. There's that. God, this is sending me having these super dark eyebrows. God. And I can't even see that metallic. I can only see like the sheen from that shadow on my lids. Alright, so now I'm going in with the e.l.f. Hydrating Face Primer. Gotcha. So I was using primer back in these days. Cool. Don't have a hydrating primer. Per se, I should say. I have a pore filling primer, but the closest thing that I have to a hydrating primer is actually my sunscreen, my face sunscreen, and that is the Unseen sunscreen from Supergoop. This guy is actually quite hydrating, so it's going to give a similar effect to that hydrating primer. And I dotted it on different points of my face. For this, I'm just going to take like a small amount on my hands and we're just going to massage this all over the face, trying to avoid the eyes and especially the brows. Alrighty, so now we are primed and ready to go. Now the reason why I'm using this sunscreen as a primer is actually because, for those of you who might not know, the sunscreen is actually formulated to work as a primer. Now I'm going in with my foundation. So I'm using the Wet n Wild Coverall Foundation in Fair. They don't make that foundation anymore, but it was a satin matte finish. And I'm using a brush to apply it. And I still have that same brush. I held on to this brush because I knew I would be doing this kind of video. But it is the Real Techniques buffer brush. And so we're going to use this guy today. Now that foundation they no longer make. And I don't really remember how it looked on my face. I know it would cling onto my dry patches, but back in those days, I wasn't taking nearly as good care of my skin as I do now. Better yet, I really wasn't taking good care of my skin back then. Let's just be honest. Whereas now I have a more intensive skincare routine and my skin has improved so much and everything since those days. You can kind of tell I'm having some issues and everything, particularly on my nose. Without getting too in depth as to what happened, I had a panic attack on Thursday, and as a result, and as well as like a slew of other stressful things going on in my life at the moment, my eczema broke out the other day. But luckily, because of the fact that I know skincare products now that can really help out my eczema, I use those, and I've been keeping up with using them to where now it's just like my skin might be a little dry in some spots, like here on the top of my nose and on the tops of my cheeks, but it's not heavily textured and it's also not heavily irritated like it was yesterday. The foundation that we're going to use, I think this is the closest foundation that I still have within my reach that will give me a similar vibe, and that is going to be this foundation that has long been since discontinued. I don't really plan on giving this guy away because it might be bad now at this point. I found it at TJ Maxx about a year ago, and that is the Becca Ultimate Coverage 24-Hour Foundation. I believe this has a satin matte finish to it, and so we're going to use this guy on the face using this brush here, and we're going to apply this on the back of my hand because back in these days I wasn't using a little palette to put my foundation on, I would just put it on the back of my hand. Now, the reason why I do the palette thing now is because putting your foundation on your back of your hand is perfectly fine. Do what you enjoy doing. The issue with it though is that your skin will absorb product, so you might wind up seeing and noticing that you are using more product than you normally would. I'm just like swiping it on, so that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, and I think this foundation here, this Becca foundation, I think it also has a lot more coverage than that Wet n Wild foundation did. So I don't know, it might have similar coverage. But as you can see, like I did one pump. I did one pump of that foundation on my hand here and picked it up with the brush, and I'm gonna need another pump. So this is part of the reason why I don't use brushes, because the brush is also going to absorb a lot of product as well. Because I find that, like, even though a sponge is going to absorb foundation too, I find that it won't absorb nearly as much, and it will also distribute product a lot better. Because I remember when I had purchased this foundation and was using it a few times, I could get away with using a single pump on my entire face. Now, granted, like I mentioned, this guy might be going bad, so it could be because of that. But honestly, I do think that it's because of the fact that I'm applying it using a brush, and I have it on the back of my hand, and my skin is absorbing product, and the brush is absorbing product. Already, I can tell, like, for one, I'm looking a bit makeup-y. This is looking a bit heavy. It's definitely looking a bit heavy. Definitely looking makeup-y. And I can also see it clinging to some dry spots a little bit. But other than that, though, it doesn't look that bad. It is settling into the lines in my forehead, which is a big reason why I stopped going for full coverage foundations, is because of the fact that it would settle into those lines so much. Honestly, I'm not mad at this foundation still. It still looks really good on the skin. I just don't go for full coverage anymore. I'll give you guys a quick little zoom so you guys can see how it looks and everything a little bit closer, especially here in the forehead. It's like I mentioned before, you can really see where it's creasing up in my forehead. And you can also tell, like, in my drier parts, so like on the tops of my cheeks, down the bridge of my nose, kind of tell in some areas around my mouth as well that is just like a little bit clingy, and also it just looks a bit makeup-y as well. So then I go in with that same brush I used earlier to set my eyes with, to set my face with the same powder. So again, I'm gonna shake this guy up a bit, and we're gonna set our face using whatever powder is in the lid here. We are just gonna go over our face with this brush. Now, if I were to be setting my face now, I would be using a much bigger, fluffier brush than this. But remember, we're trying to replicate the same kind of techniques and vibes with applying makeup as I did back in these days. And this was just something that I would do. Now, what I'm curious about right now is why I put eye primer on my under eyes. Because I never did put eyeshadow on my under eyes at all. I'm not sure if you guys can see the texture and whatnot, but this is exactly why I stopped using setting powders. Because no matter what I would do, it would always come out looking so heavy, so powdery and cakey, and just dry. And it would cling onto my dry patches so much. Now granted, like I mentioned, I did use a lot of powder, but still, like, even with just using a light hand back when I was getting good with my powder applications and whatnot, even with just using the lightest amount of powder on my face, it would still cling on to my dry patches really badly. Next thing that we're doing here is we're contouring, or at least attempting at it. And I no longer have the brush that I'm using here to do this with, but I think I might have a similar brush. I'll have to look. And I'm using the NYX Blush and Taupe for this, and I would do like my cheekbone, my jawline, and just right at the temple. Closest brush that I had to that one, it was another Shanny brush. That one I threw out years ago. So now, the NYX Blush and Taupe is what makes this very tricky and complicated, because they don't make that guy anymore. I looked through my makeup collection to try to find an eyeshadow that was similar, and I found something similar in my Moonspell Volume 1 palette, and that is the shade Sarah. It's that same kind of like light taupey brown, has a little bit of pink in it. And I'm just gonna take it on this brush here. This is not the kind of brush, it's not even similar to the brush that I used back then. It's way denser and a lot bigger, but it's the closest thing that I have to that brush. So we're gonna go for it. And back in these days, I didn't know jack shit about contouring. So what we're gonna do is, I'm going to tap off as much of this as I possibly can. And I'm going to start out by going along my jawline very lightly, just so I can see how pigmented this is going to be. Alrighty, because I'd rather place a lot here first than up here. So I'm going to go ahead and just go from here, here. I think this is about as far in as I would go. And then I would take some along the temple up here. Let me pick up just a little bit. Kind of help to give me like that deathly sunken in kind of look. And now let's just try to recreate it on this side now. Because this is like in 2016, so contouring is starting to take off and everything. A lot of people are starting to get into it and trying to see what all it is that they could do. And I mean, the shape that it's creating isn't bad. It's just that this isn't how I should contour my face and everything. Because it just looks like a gray stripe on my face and right here at my temple. It looked like I went over this using that setting powder from earlier, and so that's what I'm gonna do now. And then I also went back over it with that same brush to contour with afterwards. And we're just gonna go over it with this brush because I think this is enough of this shitty contouring and everything that we got going on now. So, yeah, which, I mean, this doesn't really do much of anything for shaping my face at all. You can't even see any shaping being done, really. I don't know. I don't know. Remember, I was young back in these days. I didn't know what the hell it was I was doing. All right, so then I go in with the NYX Soft Matte Lip Cream in Transylvania. I don't have that guy anymore. I don't have any vampy colors in my collection at the moment. I really need to replace my Anti-Socialite from Sugar Pill because I really love that guy. So we're gonna go in with Zero from Sugar Pill instead. This is a black, which I don't think I had a black lipstick back in this point in time. But it's the darkest lip color that I have, so that's what we're going for. And so there we go. I cleaned up the lip line as best as I could. So don't come for me in my lip lines. I go in with the Wet n Wild Color Icon Pencil and Baby's Got Black. So just a black pencil liner. And it looks like I'm just running that through the inner rim. And then I go in with mascara afterwards. Let me see if there's anything else that I do after this. And I put mascara on tops and bottom lashes, which I don't do bottom lashes anymore. Okay, and that's the end of the makeup. Okay, so we're just gonna put on mascara and liner now. So let me go ahead and just set my hair down and everything, unpin it. And now let's go ahead and do the pencil liner and the mascara. So yeah, nothing's going on the bottom lid apparently. I don't know why I primed my bottom lids for, but alright, guess we did for no reason. Now, here's where things are going to get really interesting. I no longer have a black pencil liner in my makeup collection. So, what we're going to do instead, this is something that I would do, kinda, back in these days. How I would navigate doing a bright, colorful pencil liner in the waterlines if I didn't have a bright, colorful pencil liner to use. I would use a white pencil as a base, put it on the waterlines and do like 2 layers of it, and then go over that pencil layer with a bright, colorful eyeshadow to set it in place with on the waterline, so that way it would be the color that I want it to be. So that's what we're gonna do here, because I have a dark-ish pencil liner that I can use, and that is a Whiskey from Urban Decay. This is like, I don't want to say like a mid-tone brown, but it probably is a mid-tone brown. It's not a super dark brown, but it's dark enough to define the eye. But since we're going for the same kind of vibe that I would go for back in these days, we're gonna do something dark and everything. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna pop this in the water lines, and then I'm gonna go over it with a black shadow. First things first, let's go ahead and put this pencil in our water lines. You see what I mean? Like, it adds some darkness, but it's not black and everything. It defines the eye without it being too harsh. That's why I like using this pencil on the water lines whenever I want to go for something a little bit deeper on the eye to define it, without actually going in with black, because I find that black, it's really harsh on me. Now, I actually don't think that this brown liner with this look is a bad look, but it's not what we did back in these days. Don't have the brush that I would typically do this sort of technique with back in those days anymore, but I do have one that's slightly similar, and that is this angled brush here from Real Techniques. So we're just gonna dip into Bulletproof again, and this is where you have to really test your patience and your talents and get real close and personal with your brush and your eye and your mirror. Oh god, I already got eyeshadow stamped onto my eyeball. Now the reason why I don't like this method, yes, it gives you that kind of effect that you look for with using like a pencil and everything, but it can really dry out your eye, because you're putting powder right at your waterline. But as you can already see, it's much darker on this eye now than this one here. Now, is this gonna look more like a black brown over here? Absolutely. But it's the best that we're gonna get. Now, it's time to put on mascara. So the one that I'm gonna be using, this is one that I have from Say. It's just their mascara. I don't even know the technical name for this. It just says mascara, I think 101 or 401 Black Noir, and it just says brand name on the front. So yeah. Oh, this did not apply onto the bottom lashes really well, but then too, I haven't done this sort of thing in a very long time. I do know a way to like make this look a little bit better. I do have like a lash comb that I can use. So yeah, because it is looking real clumpy in this outer corner. This is the final look. I lack so much like definition and life in my face. I look so heavy. I feel as if my camera is having a hard time like doing like the white balance because of just how little color is happening right now. Here's a closer up shot for you guys so you guys can see things a little bit closer. It's not that bad. It probably looked a lot worse back then just simply because I really didn't know how to do makeup back then as I do now in present day. But also it is not the best either and everything. Like I know how I would do this look now in present day, but this is not how I would do it anymore. No. Like first things first, I would not do like a dark liner in the inner rim anymore. I don't do mascara on the bottom lashes anymore because I don't know if you guys could tell, but it just looks weird for me. I don't know why. I just don't like bottom mascara. I just do not. The eyeshadow just being strictly on the top lid, no. We're bringing shadow onto the bottom lid these days and everything. Garage door had its moment, but we no longer do the garage door moment anymore. Also, I would blend the red farther up now than I did back then and everything, like, because this, like, because of the fact that I have hooded eyes and everything, all you can see is just like the faintest hint of red on my eyes. Also, I wouldn't do these dark brows anymore. Like, I understand why I was doing it back in this day and era and everything, because I thought like, oh, I have black hair, let's do this. But you could see in the fucking video my brown fucking side cut. Like, bitch, we all know that's not your natural hair color. Stop lying. The foundation honestly isn't that bad. It does look really heavy though. I don't like full coverage foundation on myself anymore. Like I mentioned earlier, I prefer like light coverage now and everything, like at most a medium coverage. That's what I prefer now with foundation, just simply because it looks better with my skin and everything, my skin type, and just the fact that this doesn't happen. So yeah, like honestly the only part of this look that I really like are the lips. That's really about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until I see you guys in my next one, whenever that might be. Goodbye.